Sarah Mitchell stood in the marble foyer of the penthouse, her worn canvas bag clutched in both hands, trying not to stare at the chandelier that probably cost more than her car. She had been through 12 interviews in the past month, and this was her last hope. The employment agency had been very clear about that. The man who emerged from the hallway was younger than she expected for someone with a reputation like Alexander Thornton. Maybe 35, with dark hair that looked like he had been running his hands through it all morning, and eyes that assessed her with the intensity of someone conducting a business merger rather than hiring a nanny. Alexander Thornton did not waste time on pleasantries. He gestured to the sitting room and spoke as he walked. "You are the 18th nanny I have interviewed in 6 months. The last one lasted 3 days. The one before that made it 2 weeks, which is actually the record." Sarah followed him into a room that overlooked Central Park. She had never seen so much space in a New York apartment. "The agency mentioned that your son is challenging." Alexander laughed, but there was no humor in it. Challenging. That is the polite term. Behavioral specialists call him oppositional defiant. Teachers call him impossible. I call him my son, and I am running out of options. He turned to face her directly. "Oliver is 8 years old. His mother died when he was 5. Since then, he has driven away more caregivers than I can count. He does not throw tantrums. He is far more strategic than that. He negotiates, he manipulates, he finds every loophole in every rule. He is brilliant and exhausting, and I do not know how to reach him anymore." Sarah set her bag down carefully. "Tell me about a typical day." There is no typical day. That is the problem. He refuses to follow any routine. Getting him to school is a negotiation. Getting him to eat requires 3 backup plans. Bedtime is a debate that would impress a lawyer. He does not cry or yell, he just makes everything infinitely complicated until you want to pull your hair out. Alexander paced to the window. "I built a company from nothing. I negotiate million-dollar deals before breakfast, but my 8-year-old son has completely defeated me." What did the other nannies try? Everything. Strict schedules, reward charts, positive reinforcement, consequences, bribery. One woman had a PhD in child psychology. Oliver had her questioning her career choice by day 2. Alexander turned back to Sarah. "I will be honest with you, Miss Mitchell. I am desperate. My work is suffering because I spend half my time managing crises at home. Oliver is falling behind in school because he spends more time arguing with teachers than learning. And I miss my son. I miss the little boy who used to laugh and play and trust me." Sarah heard the exhaustion in his voice, saw it in the set of his shoulders. This was not just a wealthy man annoyed by an inconvenience. This was a father who was drowning. "Can I meet him?" she asked. Alexander checked his watch. "He gets home from school in an hour. But I should warn you, he will test you immediately. He has gotten very good at identifying the exact moment when people give up." "I would still like to meet him." Something flickered in Alexander's expression, something that might have been hope if he had any left. "I will tell you what I told the last 3 nannies. If you can get through 1 week, I will double your salary. If you can actually get Oliver to cooperate without it becoming World War III, I will triple it." Sarah smiled. "I am not here for the money, Mr. Thornton, but I would like to try." The hour passed with Alexander explaining logistics and expectations, showing her around the apartment, and providing what he called the survival guide. It was actually a binder full of failed strategies and notes from previous caregivers. Sarah flipped through it, reading accounts of arguments about vegetable consumption, protests against toothbrushing, and elaborate schemes to avoid homework. When the front door opened, she heard a woman's voice, the private school's car service attendant, saying goodbye. Then footsteps, deliberate and unhurried. The boy who appeared in the doorway was small for 8, with his father's dark hair and eyes that were far too old for his face. He wore a private school uniform that looked like it had been through a minor war. his shirt untucked, his tie missing entirely. Oliver looked at Sarah with the flat assessment of someone much older. "You are the new one." "I am Sarah. It is nice to meet you, Oliver." "You will not last." He said it matter-of-factly, without malice. They never do. Alexander stepped forward. "Oliver, that is not how we speak to people." "Why? It's true." "How many have there been, Dad? 15? 20? Oliver dropped his backpack on the floor. "I am going to my room." "Homework first," Alexander said. And Sarah heard the weariness in his voice. "We agreed on this. I agreed to nothing. You made a rule, and I am choosing not to follow it." Oliver started toward the hallway. "Oliver Benjamin Thornton, homework, now." The boy stopped, turned, and in a perfectly calm voice said, "Or what? You will take away screen time? I do not care about screens. You will cancel my weekend plans? I do not have any. You will send me to my room? I was already going there. Your consequences do not work, Dad. They never have." Sarah watched the exchange with interest. Oliver was not being bratty or emotional. He was stating what he saw as facts, dismantling his father's authority with logic rather than tantrums. It was fascinating and heartbreaking at the same time. Alexander looked at Sarah with an expression that said, "See what I mean?" Then he turned back to his son. "We will discuss this at dinner. I am not hungry." Oliver walked away, and a moment later, a door closed firmly down the hall. Alexander rubbed his face with both hands. That was actually one of the better interactions. At least he did not get the neighbor involved this time. The neighbor? Last month, he convinced the woman in the penthouse below us that I was denying him food. She brought up a casserole and lectured me about child welfare for 20 minutes. Alexander shook his head. He is not starved. He is not abused. He is grieving, and I do not know how to help him. And apparently, neither does anyone else. Sarah picked up her bag. "Can I try something? If you can get him to eat dinner and do homework without a 3-hour argument, I will build a statue in your honor." Sarah smiled and walked down the hallway. The apartment was enormous, and she followed the sound of movement to a door covered in "Keep Out" signs, written in careful 8-year-old handwriting. She knocked gently. "Go away." "It is Sarah. I am not here to make you do homework." Silence. Then, "What do you want?" "I was wondering if you could help me understand something. Can I come in?" More silence. Then, "Fine." The room was what you would expect for a wealthy child's bedroom, except for one thing. While there were expensive toys and games and a computer setup that would make an adult jealous, everything was organized with meticulous precision. Books arranged by height, toys in perfect rows, even the papers on the desk were aligned. This was not the room of a chaotic, defiant child. This was the room of someone trying very hard to control something in a world that felt out of control. Oliver sat on his bed, arms crossed. "What do you want to understand?" Sarah sat on the floor, not on the bed, not in the desk chair, but on the carpet, where she had to look up at him. "Your dad said you are really good at negotiation. I am terrible at it. I always give in too easily or ask for too little. I was wondering if you could teach me." Oliver's expression did not change, but Sarah saw the flicker of interest. "Why would I do that?" "Because you are good at it, and I am not. And because I think we could help each other." "How?" "Well, your dad needs someone to stay who will not quit. I need this job. But I do not want to spend my time here fighting with you about homework and vegetables. That sounds exhausting for both of us. So maybe we could negotiate something that works for everyone." Oliver studied her. "Everyone says that. Then they try to make me do what they want anyway." A tiny smile tugged at the corner of Oliver's mouth, there and gone in an instant. "You sound like you have dealt with that before. I have 3 younger brothers. I wrote my thesis on negotiation theory in family systems. Trust me, I have seen every trick." "What is your thesis about?" "About how most people think negotiation is about winning. But actually, the best negotiations are when everyone feels like they got something they wanted. It's about finding out what people really need, not just what they are asking for. Oliver leaned forward slightly. That sounds like psychology. It is a little bit, but mostly it's just about listening and being creative. Sarah met his eyes. So here's my question. What do you actually want, Oliver? Not what you think you are supposed to want. What do you really want? The boy looked at her for a long moment, and Sarah saw something shift in his expression. The defensive walls did not come down, but they cracked just a little. I want people to stop treating me like I am broken. Sarah nodded slowly. Okay, that is fair. What else? I want people to stop lying and saying things are okay when they are not. Also fair. And I want my dad to stop looking at me like I am a problem he needs to solve. Sarah felt her heart crack a little. Those are all really reasonable things to want. Can I tell you what I want? I guess. I want to not get fired on my first day. I want to figure out how to help your dad without making you feel worse. And I want to not lie to you or treat you like you are broken, because I do not think you are broken. I think you are sad and angry, and you have every right to be both of those things. Oliver blinked, and for just a second, Sarah saw the little boy under the defensive armor. People do not usually say that. Say what? That I have a right to be angry. They always want me to feel better or move on or be grateful for what I have. That is because people are uncomfortable with sadness. It makes them want to fix it. But sometimes sadness is not something to fix. Sometimes it is just something to feel. Sarah paused. Your mom died. That is terrible and unfair, and no amount of positive thinking or consequences or reward charts is going to change that. Of course you are angry. Oliver's eyes were shining now, bright with tears he would not let fall. If I let myself be sad, I am afraid I will not stop. Then maybe we do not try to stop it. Maybe we just figure out how to be sad and still do the other stuff we need to do, like homework and eating and all the regular life things. How? I do not know yet, but I think we could figure it out together if you are willing to negotiate with me. Oliver wiped his eyes quickly, straightening his shoulders. What are the terms? Sarah smiled. How about this? You tell me what you need to get through homework tonight without it being a fight. I will do everything I can to make that happen. Then we have dinner, and after dinner, you tell me one true thing about how you are feeling. It does not have to be big or deep, just one true thing. That is it? That is it for tonight. We can negotiate tomorrow when we know more. Oliver thought about it. Sarah waited, not pushing, not hovering, just sitting on his floor and giving him space to think. Finally, he said, I need to do homework at the kitchen table, not in my room. And I need you to sit with me, but not help unless I ask. And I need breaks every 20 minutes. Done. Anything else? Can we have something other than whatever healthy meal the nutritionist planned? Sarah grinned. What do you want? Grilled cheese and tomato soup. I think I can make that happen. Do we have a deal? Oliver held out his hand, very serious, very formal. We have a deal. Sarah shook his hand. Then let us go negotiate with your father about dinner. Alexander was in his home office when they found him, and the surprise on his face when he saw Oliver and Sarah walking together, calmly, was almost comical. Dad, I am going to do my homework at the kitchen table. Sarah is going to sit with me, and we are having grilled cheese for dinner. Alexander opened his mouth, probably to object to the grilled cheese, but Sarah caught his eye and gave a tiny shake of her head. Okay, Alexander said slowly. That sounds good. Oliver looked suspicious. Really? You are not going to mention the vegetable requirements or the balanced meal plan? We can have tomato soup too. Tomatoes are vegetables. Alexander glanced at Sarah, clearly wondering what kind of magic she had worked. I will join you both for dinner after you finish homework. Deal. Oliver headed toward the kitchen. When he was out of earshot, Alexander stared at Sarah. What did you do? He was ready to barricade himself in his room 15 minutes ago. I negotiated, Sarah said simply, and I listened. Now I need to figure out how to make grilled cheese, and you need to give us space to work this out. I don't understand. You will, but right now, the less you hover, the better. Trust me. Alexander looked like he wanted to argue, to demand explanations, to take control of the situation. But something in Sarah's expression stopped him. Okay, I will be in my office if you need me. Sarah found Oliver at the kitchen table, his homework spread out with the same meticulous precision as his room. She sat down across from him, pulled out a book, and started reading. For 5 minutes, neither of them spoke. Oliver kept glancing at her, waiting for instructions or corrections or pressure. Finally, he said, "You are not going to tell me what to do? You know what homework you have. You know how to do it. I am just here in case you need something. What if I don't do it? Then you don't do it. But that was not our deal. Our deal was that you do your homework and I sit with you. So far, we are both keeping our end of the bargain." Oliver stared at her for another moment, then picked up his pencil. This is weird. Probably, but maybe weird is okay. 20 minutes later, Oliver looked up. Break time. Okay, what do you want to do for your break? Can we go look at the view from the balcony? The balcony wrapped around 2 sides of the penthouse, and the view of Central Park was breathtaking in the late afternoon light. Oliver stood at the railing, and Sarah stood next to him, not talking, just looking. "My mom used to bring me out here," Oliver said quietly. "When I was little and could not sleep, she would bring me out here, and we would look at the lights, and she would make up stories about the people in all the buildings." "That sounds really nice." "Dad does not come out here anymore. I think it makes him too sad." "Probably. People deal with sad in different ways." "Is it okay that I still come out here, even though it makes me miss her?" Sarah looked at the boy beside her, so small against the massive cityscape. "I think it is more than okay. I think it is important. Remembering people we love is not the same as being stuck in the past. It is just about keeping them part of our lives." Oliver nodded, not looking at her. They stood in silence until he said, "Break is over. Back to homework." By the time Alexander emerged from his office, Oliver had finished his homework without a single argument. Sarah was at the stove making grilled cheese sandwiches, and Oliver was setting the table with the same precise care he brought to everything else. Alexander stopped in the doorway of the kitchen, staring at the scene like it was a mirage. "Everything okay?" "Everything is good," Sarah said. "Dinner will be ready in 5 minutes." They sat at the table together, the 3 of them, and it was awkward at first. Alexander kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Oliver to refuse the food, or start an argument, or do something to disrupt the fragile peace. But Oliver ate his grilled cheese and soup, answered questions about school with actual sentences instead of single words, and even laughed once when Sarah told a story about one of her brothers getting stuck in a sleeping bag. After dinner, Oliver looked at Sarah. The one true thing. Alexander glanced between them, confused, but Sarah just nodded. Oliver took a breath. "I am tired of being angry all the time, but I do not know how to stop." The silence that followed was heavy with everything unspoken. Alexander's hand tightened on his water glass, and Sarah saw him struggling with what to say, how to fix it, how to make it better. Before he could speak, Sarah said, "Thank you for telling me that. That was brave." Oliver nodded and stood up. "I am going to my room to read." "Okay, I will be here if you need anything." After Oliver left, Alexander stared at Sarah. What just happened? "We negotiated. We talked. We made a deal, and we kept it." "That is it? That is all it took?" Sarah started clearing the dishes. "It is not about what it took. It is about what he needed. He does not need someone to control him or fix him. He needs someone to see him and listen to him and treat him like his feelings matter. I do that. I try to do that every day. I know you do. But you were his dad, and you were grieving too. And sometimes it is hard to see clearly when you are in the middle of the pain." Sarah loaded plates into the dishwasher.
Oliver is not trying to be difficult. He is trying to have control over something in a life that feels out of control. When his mom died, his whole world changed, and he did not get a say in any of it. So now he fights for a say in everything, even things that don't matter, because at least it is something he can control. Alexander sat down at the table, suddenly looking exhausted. The therapist said something similar, but knowing it and fixing it are two different things. You cannot fix grief, Mr. Thornton. You can only move through it. And Oliver has to move through it in his own way, at his own pace. Sarah sat down across from him. But what you can do is stop treating every day like a battle. Stop seeing his resistance as defiance and start seeing it as communication. He is telling you what he needs. You just have to listen differently. And if I cannot, if I am too close to it, too tangled up in my own grief, then that is what I am here for, to be the bridge until you and Oliver can find your way back to each other. Alexander looked at her for a long moment. You are different from the others. I know. Why are you so confident this will work? Sarah smiled. I am not confident at all, but I am willing to try, and I am willing to fail, and I am willing to keep showing up, even when it is hard. Sometimes that is all anyone needs. The next morning, Sarah arrived at 6:30 to find Alexander already in the kitchen, drinking coffee and staring at his laptop like it had personally offended him. Morning, Sarah said, setting down her bag. What time does Oliver need to be up? 6:45, but good luck with that. Getting him out of bed is usually a 30-minute ordeal involving multiple warnings and negotiations. Can I try something? Alexander gestured helplessly. At this point, I will try anything. Sarah walked to Oliver's room and knocked gently. Oliver, it is Sarah. I need your help with
something. She heard movement. Then the door opened a crack. Oliver looked rumpled and suspicious. What time is it? 6:45. I know it is early, but I was hoping you could help me figure out your dad's coffee maker. He looks like he needs better coffee, and the machine in there looks like it could launch rockets. Oliver's mouth twitched. It is an espresso machine. It is not that complicated. Maybe not for you, but I am scared I will break it. Oliver sighed, but he came out of his room, still in his pajamas. Fine, but then I am going back to sleep. Deal. In the kitchen, Oliver showed Sarah how to use the espresso machine with the patient superiority of a child who knew he was smarter than the adult in the room. Alexander watched in amazement as his son, who usually required threats and consequences just to get out of bed, stood in the kitchen in his pajamas explaining the difference between espresso and lungo. See? You just hit this button, wait for the crema, and done. Oliver handed Sarah the cup. It is not that hard. You are a lifesaver. Thank you. Sarah took a sip. This is so much better than what I made. You have a real skill. Oliver shrugged, but he looked pleased. I watch the videos sometimes, about coffee and cooking and stuff. Maybe you could teach me more sometime. I'm terrible in the kitchen. Maybe. Oliver started to head back to his room, then paused. What time do I have to be ready for school? 7:30. Okay. He disappeared down the hallway. Alexander stared at Sarah. He never wakes up without a fight. I did not wake him up. I asked for his help. There is a difference. Sarah poured coffee for Alexander. People like to feel useful, especially kids. Oliver does not want to be managed. He wants to be respected. So instead of telling him what to do, I ask him to help me. It gives him choice and control without taking away your authority. That seems manipulative. It is not manipulation if it is genuine. I really could not figure out your coffee maker, and he really does know how it works. I just framed it in a way that gave him a reason to participate. Sarah sat down at the table. Parenting is not about winning, Mr. Thornton. It is about connection. And connection requires meeting people where they are, not where you wish they were. That seems manipulative. It is not manipulation if it is genuine. I really could not figure out your coffee maker, and he really does know how it works. I just framed it in a way that gave him a reason to participate. Sarah sat down at the table. Parenting is not about winning, Mr. Thornton. It is about connection. and connection requires meeting people where they are, not where you wish they were. At 7:30, Oliver emerged from his room, dressed and ready for school. His shirt was untucked and his hair was wild, but he had his backpack and he was on time. Alexander, who had been preparing for the usual battle, just stared. "You are ready. You said 7:30. It is 7:30. Oliver looked at Sarah. "Can we negotiate breakfast?" "What do you want to negotiate?" "I will eat breakfast if I can pick what it is." Sarah glanced at Alexander, who nodded helplessly. "Within reason, yes. Yogurt and granola." "That is very reasonable. Deal." While Oliver ate, Alexander pulled Sarah aside. "This does not feel real. It is like someone replaced my son with a pod person. He is the same kid. You are just approaching him differently." Sarah kept her voice low. "But I want to be clear about something. This is not a miracle cure. There will be hard days. There will be setbacks. Oliver is still grieving, and grief does not follow a timeline. But if we can keep building trust and giving him agency in his own life, we can help him feel safer. And when he feels safer, he will not need to fight so hard for control." "I want to believe that." "Then believe it, and trust the process, even when it's messy." The first week was not perfect, but it was better. There were negotiations over everything, from homework to bedtime to what counted as appropriate clothing for dinner. But they were real negotiations, not battles. Sarah would sit with Oliver and they would talk through options until they found something that worked for both of them. On Friday evening, Alexander came home to find Sarah and Oliver in the living room, building something elaborate out of blocks. Neither of them looked up when he entered. "If we put the reinforcement here, the whole structure will be more stable." "You are right. I did not think about load distribution." Sarah adjusted a piece. "You are really good at spatial reasoning. My mom used to say I should be an architect. She said I saw buildings in my head." It was the first time Oliver had mentioned his mother without being prompted, and Sarah saw Alexander freeze in the doorway. "That sounds like she really understood you," Sarah said quietly. "She did." Oliver placed another block. "Dad tries, but he does not really get how my brain works." Alexander looked like he had been punched, and Sarah caught his eye, shaking her head slightly. This was not criticism. It was just truth, and truth was important. "I'm sure your dad is doing his best," Sarah said. "Sometimes it's hard for people to understand each other, even when they love each other a lot. I know. I do not hate him or anything. I just wish things were different." "Different how?" Oliver thought about it. "I wish Mom was not dead. But since I cannot have that, I wish Dad did not look so sad all the time. It makes me feel like it is my fault." "Oliver, your dad's sadness is not your fault. He is sad because he lost someone he loved, just like you are. That is not because of anything you did or did not do. But I make it worse. I hear him on the phone with his assistant sometimes. He is always saying he has to deal with Oliver issues, like I am a problem at work." Sarah's heart broke a little. "Have you told him that bothers you?" "No." "Why not?" "Because then he will feel bad, and he already feels bad enough." Alexander stepped into the room. His eyes were red, and his voice was rough when he spoke. "Oliver?" Oliver turned, saw his father's face, and his own expression shuddered closed. "I am going to my room." "Wait, please." Alexander sat down on the couch. "I need to say something." Oliver stayed where he was, wary and defensive. "I am sorry," Alexander said. "I am sorry that I talk about you like you are a problem to be solved. I am sorry that I have made you feel responsible for my sadness. I am sorry that I have been so focused on fixing things that I have not just been here with you." Oliver's chin trembled. "You do not have to apologize." "Yes, I do. Because you are not a problem, Oliver. You are my son, and I love you more than anything in this world. And I have been so scared of losing you the way I lost your mom that I have been holding on too tight and pushing you away at the same time." Alexander's voice cracked. "I miss her too, every single day. And I do not know how to be a good dad without her here to help me. But that is not your fault. None of this is your fault." Oliver stood very still, tears streaming down his face. I miss her so much. I know, buddy. I know. And I am sorry I am so difficult. I do not mean to be. I just do not know how to make everything stop being so hard." Alexander opened his arms, and Oliver crossed the space between them, collapsing into his father's embrace. They held each other and cried, really cried, for the first time since the funeral. Sarah slipped out of the room quietly, giving them privacy. She stood in the hallway, her own eyes wet, and listened to the sound of a father and son finally finding their way back to each other. When Alexander found her an hour later, he looked exhausted but lighter somehow, like he had been carrying a weight and finally set it down. "Thank you," he said simply. "You did the hard part. You showed up and told the truth. Because you made space for it. Because you helped me see what I was missing." Alexander shook his head. "I meant what I said about doubling your salary. Tripling it. Name your price." Sarah smiled. "I just want to keep doing what I am doing. Help Oliver. Help you. Figure this out together. You are remarkable, you know that? I am just someone who listened. Sometimes that is all anyone needs." The following weeks brought more challenges. There was the day Oliver refused to go to school because a teacher had embarrassed him in front of the class. Instead of forcing him, Sarah negotiated with the school to allow him to attend classes remotely for a day while they addressed the issue. Oliver felt heard, the teacher got feedback about classroom management, and the crisis was averted. There was the day Oliver had a meltdown about his mother's birthday, throwing things and screaming until his voice was hoarse. Sarah did not try to calm him down or reason with him. She just sat nearby and let him feel everything he needed to feel. And when he finally exhausted himself, she helped him clean up and held him while he cried. There was the evening when Alexander had to fly to London for an emergency meeting, and Oliver convinced himself his father would not come back. Sarah stayed up with him all night, video calling Alexander every 2 hours, until Oliver finally believed he was safe and coming home. Through it all, they negotiated about food and bedtime and homework and friends and screen time and every tiny detail of daily life. But the negotiations changed. They became less about control and more about communication. Oliver started asking for what he needed instead of fighting for it. Alexander started listening instead of dictating. 3 months after Sarah arrived, Alexander came home to find Oliver doing homework at the kitchen table. Not because he had been forced or bribed, but because it was part of the routine they had built together. "How was your dad?" Alexander asked, and Oliver actually answered with details instead of single words. They had dinner together, the three of them, and it felt almost normal. There was laughter and conversation, and only one minor negotiation about vegetables. After Oliver went to bed, Alexander sat with Sarah in the living room. "I wanted to talk to you about something." "Okay." "I have been thinking about what you said, about grief and control and letting Oliver move through things at his own pace." Alexander paused. "I want to take him to see his mother's grave. We have not been since the funeral. I could not face it, and I assumed he could not either. But I think we need to go, together." "That sounds like a good idea. Will you come with us? I know it is beyond the scope of nanny duties, but I think Oliver would want you there. I would want you there." Sarah met his eyes. "Of course I will come." The cemetery was quiet on Saturday morning. Oliver held his father's hand on one side and Sarah's on the other as they walked to the grave. When they reached it, Oliver stood silently, reading the headstone. "I do not know what to say," he finally whispered. "You do not have to say anything," Alexander told him. "We are just here to visit." Oliver knelt down, touching the grass. "I brought you flowers, Mom. Dad let me pick them out. I got the yellow ones because you always said yellow was happy." Alexander knelt beside his son. "I miss you so much. I am trying my best with Oliver, but it is hard without you. You were always better at this than me." "That is not true," Oliver said quietly. "You are good at it now. You just needed practice." Father and son looked at each other, and something passed between them, something wordless and profound. They stayed for an hour, talking to the grave, to each other, to the memory of the woman they both loved. And when they left, Oliver's shoulders were lighter.
On the drive home, Oliver said, "Sarah, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you going to leave like the others?" Sarah turned in her seat to look at him. "I do not have plans to leave. Do you want me to stay?" "Yes. I mean, if you want to. But I like having you here. It feels better with you here. Then I will stay as long as you need me." Oliver nodded, satisfied. "Good, because I still need help negotiating with Dad sometimes." Alexander laughed. "You do not need any help with that. You could negotiate world peace if you wanted to." "Maybe, when I am older," Oliver grinned, and it was the first real, unguarded smile Sarah had seen from him. By 6 months, the change in Oliver was remarkable. He still had hard days, still got frustrated and overwhelmed, still mourned his mother. But he had learned to talk about his feelings instead of acting out. He had learned to ask for what he needed instead of fighting for control. He had learned that it was possible to be sad and happy at the same time, to miss someone and still move forward. Alexander changed too. He learned to listen before reacting, to ask questions instead of giving orders, to be present instead of trying to fix everything. He learned that being a good father was not about having all the answers, but about being willing to figure things out together. One evening, after Oliver had gone to bed, Alexander poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to Sarah. "I want to show you something." He pulled up a document on his laptop. It was a contract, but not for employment. It was a proposal to make Sarah a partner in a new venture, a consulting business helping families navigate grief and behavioral challenges in children. "I have been thinking about this for months," Alexander said. "What you have done for Oliver, for us, it is not just about being a good nanny. You have a real gift, a real methodology. Other families need this. Other kids like Oliver need someone who will see them and hear them and help them find their way through." Sarah stared at the proposal. "I do not know what to say. You do not have to decide now, but think about it. You have changed our lives, Sarah. You gave me my son back. You gave Oliver a path forward. That is worth more than I could ever pay you." Alexander smiled. "Besides, Oliver made me promise to do whatever it takes to make sure you stay. He wrote me a very detailed negotiation proposal about it." Sarah laughed, tears in her eyes. "Of course he did." "So, what do you say? Will you stay? Will you help me build something that can help other families the way you helped ours?" Sarah looked at the contract, at the life-changing opportunity in front of her. But more than that, she thought of Oliver's smile, about the sound of his laughter, about the way he had learned to trust again. She thought about Alexander learning to be the father he wanted to be, about a family finding their way back to each other. "Yes," she said, "I will stay." Oliver was ecstatic when they told him. He immediately launched into a list of ideas for the new business, complete with a name, a logo design, and a marketing strategy. Alexander listened patiently, taking notes, treating his 8-year-old son's ideas with the same seriousness he would a business partner's proposal. Later, that night, after the excitement had died down, Oliver found Sarah in the kitchen. "Can I tell you something?" "Always." "When you first got here, I thought you would be like everyone else. I thought you would try to change me and then leave when you realized I was not going to change. But you did not try to change me. You just helped me figure out how to be myself in a way that did not make everything so hard. And you stayed, even when I was difficult." Oliver looked at her seriously. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Sarah hugged him. "Thank you for not giving up on yourself." A year after Sarah arrived, the Thornton house was transformed. Not in its physical appearance, though there were fewer keep-out signs and more family photos, but in its feeling, its energy. It was a home again, not a battlefield. Oliver thrived. His grades improved, not because of pressure, but because he felt safe enough to focus. He made friends, not because he was forced into social situations, but because he learned how to trust people. He still negotiated everything, but now it was a personality trait rather than a defense mechanism. He knew what he wanted, and he asked for it, confidently and clearly. Alexander thrived too. His company continued to grow, but he was present in a way he had not been before. He left work on time. He attended school events. He had long conversations with his son about everything from homework to philosophy to what they wanted for dinner. He smiled more. He laughed more. He was healing. Sarah thrived as well. The consulting business grew quickly, word spreading through wealthy circles about the nanny who had tamed the untamable Oliver Thornton. But it was not about taming. It was never about taming. It was about understanding, about meeting children where they were, about building bridges instead of walls. On the anniversary of the day Sarah arrived, Alexander surprised her with a party. It was small, just the three of them and a few close friends, but it was perfect. Oliver made a speech that he had clearly rehearsed. 1 year ago, Sarah came to our house and everything changed. Not because she had magic powers or because she was super strict or anything like that. She changed things because she listened to me. She treated me like a real person with real feelings and real ideas. She taught me that I do not have to be perfect, I just have to be honest. She taught my dad how to talk to me. She taught both of us that it is okay to be sad, and it is okay to be happy, and it is okay to be both at the same time. He grinned at Sarah. Also, she makes really good grilled cheese. Everyone laughed, and Sarah wiped away tears. Alexander stood next. Sarah, when I challenged you to negotiate with my son, I thought I was setting you up for failure. I thought I was watching another person learn what I had learned, that Oliver was impossible, that there was no way to reach him. But you proved me wrong in the best possible way. You showed me that Oliver was not the problem. My approach was the problem. You showed me that negotiation is not about winning, it is about understanding. You showed me that my son was not broken, he was just hurting. And you showed both of us that healing is possible if you are patient and present and willing to do the hard work. His voice thickened with emotion. You gave me my family back. There are not enough words to thank you for that. So instead, I will just say this. You are not our nanny anymore, Sarah. You are family, and you always will be. Sarah could not speak. She just nodded, overwhelmed by gratitude and love and the profound sense that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Oliver hugged her. You are staying forever, right? Because I already negotiated that with Dad, and he agreed. Sarah laughed through her tears. I am staying as long as you want me here. Good, because I have a lot more things I need help negotiating, like getting a dog and staying up late on weekends, and maybe a bigger allowance. Alexander groaned. What have I created? You have created a kid who knows what he wants and is not afraid to ask for it, Sarah said. That is not a problem. That is a gift. That night, after the party ended and Oliver was asleep, Sarah stood on the balcony looking at the city lights, thinking about the year that had passed. She thought about the scared, angry little boy she had met and the confident, joyful child he had become. She thought about the exhausted, desperate father who had been drowning in grief and the present, engaged parent he was now. But mostly, she thought about the power of listening, of seeing people as they were, not as you wanted them to be, of meeting them in their pain instead of trying to rush them past it, of negotiating not to win, but to understand. The door opened behind her, and Alexander stepped out. Beautiful night. It is. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city breathe.
I never thanked you properly, Alexander said, for taking a chance on us, for staying when it was hard, for seeing Oliver when I could not. You do not have to thank me. This has been the most rewarding experience of my life. I just want you to know that you did not just save Oliver, you saved me too. I was lost in my grief and my fear, and I did not know how to find my way back. You showed me the path. Sarah smiled. You would have found it eventually. You love your son too much not to. Maybe, but it would have taken much longer, and the damage might have been irreversible. What you did mattered, Sarah. It will always matter.
Inside, they heard a door open, small footsteps padding down the hall. A moment later, Oliver appeared on the balcony in his pajamas. "I had a bad dream," he said quietly. Alexander opened his arms and Oliver walked into them. "Want to talk about it?" "Not really. Can we just stay out here for a while?" "Of course." The three of them stood on the balcony, looking at the lights of the city, and Sarah realized this was what family looked like. Not perfect, not without pain, but present and honest and together. Oliver leaned against his father, half asleep. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy?" "I am glad Sarah came." "Me too, Oliver. Me too." Sarah watched them, father and son, healing together. She thought about the challenge Alexander had issued a year ago, the ultimatum that had seemed so daunting. "If you can negotiate with my son, I will double your salary." But it turned out the real negotiation was not with Oliver at all. It was with grief, with fear, with the walls people build around their hearts when they are hurt. And the price was not money or status or success. The price was patience and presence and the willingness to sit in discomfort without trying to fix it. Sarah had paid that price gladly, and what she received in return was immeasurable. A family transformed, a child thriving, a father reunited with his son. And for herself, the deep satisfaction of knowing that her work mattered, that her presence made a difference, that she had helped heal something that seemed broken beyond repair. The next morning, Oliver came to breakfast with a notebook. "I have been thinking about the business." Alexander and Sarah exchanged amused glances. "Oh?" "Yes, we should make a handbook, like Dad's survival guide, but actually useful. I could write the chapter about what kids actually want when they are being difficult." "That is a really good idea," Sarah said seriously. "What would you put in that chapter?" Oliver flipped open his notebook, revealing pages of careful notes. "First, you have to understand that most kids are not trying to be bad. They are trying to communicate something. So instead of punishing the behavior, you have to figure out what they are trying to say. Second, you have to give kids choices. Real choices, not fake ones like, do you want to do homework now or in 5 minutes? That is just the same thing with a timer. Third, you have to admit when you don't understand. Kids can tell when adults are faking it or just saying things to make them feel better. Be honest. Fourth, you have to keep your promises. If you say you are going to do something, do it. Kids remember everything." Alexander stared at his son. "That is actually brilliant." "I know. I have been thinking about it a lot." Oliver looked at Sarah. "Will you help me write it? I am good at ideas, but not so good at putting them in the right order." "I would be honored to help you write it." Over the next few months, they worked on the handbook together. Oliver contributed chapters on understanding kids, on negotiation strategies, on what made him feel safe and heard. Sarah added research and theory and practical strategies. Alexander provided business structure and publishing connections. But more than the handbook, they built something else, a model for how families could work together, how parents and children could be partners instead of adversaries, how grief could be acknowledged without consuming everything. They filmed videos of Oliver explaining his perspective, and they went viral. Millions of parents watched an 8-year-old explaining that he was not trying to be difficult. He was trying to be heard. The response was overwhelming. Letters poured in from families around the world. Parents who were struggling with their own difficult children, who felt like failures, who were desperate for help. Sarah and Alexander hired a team, trained them in the methodology, and started offering workshops and consulting services. Oliver became something of a celebrity in child development circles. He spoke at conferences, was interviewed by parenting magazines, and became an advocate for children who were labeled as difficult or defiant. He never shied away from his own story, talking openly about his mother's death, his anger, his struggle to feel safe in a world
that had hurt him. And through it all, he remained himself, confident, articulate, negotiating everything from his speaking fees to what he wanted for breakfast. But now it was not about control. It was just who he was. On Oliver's 10th birthday, 2 years after Sarah arrived, they threw a big party. Friends from school, business associates, families they had helped through consulting. The penthouse was full of laughter and joy. Sarah stood to the side, watching Oliver hold court with a group of adults, explaining his theory about homework modification with the confidence of someone 3 times his age. Alexander appeared beside her. He has come so far. You both have. I still have moments where I cannot believe this is real, that we made it through, that he is okay. Alexander watched his son with pride and love. I think about what would have happened if you had not taken this job, if you had been like the others and given up. I do not think we would have made it. You would have figured it out eventually. Maybe, but maybe not. He turned to face her. I want to give you something. He handed her a small box. Inside was a key. What is this? A key to the penthouse. I know you have one for work, but this is different. This is a family key. Because you are family, Sarah, not just to Oliver, but to me. You have a place here always, for as long as you want it. Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. Thank you. That means more than you know. No, thank you for everything, for seeing what we needed even when we could not see it ourselves, for staying, for being patient, for being here. Oliver ran over, grabbing Sarah's hand. Come on, we are about to cut the cake, and I need you to negotiate with Dad about whether I can have 2 pieces. Sarah laughed. You can negotiate that yourself. You are the expert. But you are better at making Dad say yes. That is because I use logic and reason, Sarah teased. That is what I use. No, you use charm and persistence. There is a difference. Oliver grinned. Is that bad? Not at all. It is working pretty well for you. They joined the party, and Sarah watched as Oliver negotiated, as Alexander listened and engaged, as father and son worked out a compromise about cake that left everyone satisfied. This was what she had come to do, not to fix or control or manage, but to facilitate connection, to help people hear each other, to create space for healing and growth and love. The challenge Alexander had issued 2 years ago seemed almost quaint now. If you can negotiate with my son, I will double your salary. But the real negotiation had been so much bigger than that. It was about negotiating the terms of grief, the boundaries of love, the balance between control and freedom. And what she had won was not a doubled salary or even a transformed career, though those things had come. What she had won was a family, a place to belong, the profound satisfaction of work that mattered. Oliver appeared at her side with 2 pieces of cake. I negotiated for both of us. You did? Yup. I told Dad that you worked hard on this party and deserved extra cake, and he agreed. So now we both get 2 pieces and no one can say anything about it. Sarah hugged him. You are remarkable. You know that? I learned from the best. Oliver took a bite of cake, then looked up at her seriously. Sarah? Yeah? I love you, like family love. Is that okay to say? Sarah felt her heart expand. It is more than okay. I love you too, Oliver, like family love. Good, because I was worried it would be weird. But Dad said it was not weird. It was just true. And we should always tell the truth about how we feel. Your dad is right about that. Oliver nodded, satisfied, and went back to eating his cake. Sarah watched him, this bright, confident, joyful child who had once been so lost and angry. She thought about the journey they had all taken, the negotiation that had saved a family. And she realized that the most important negotiation of all had been the one they made with themselves. To be vulnerable, to be honest, to keep showing up even when it was hard, to believe that healing was possible and worth fighting for. Alexander raised his glass across the room, meeting her eyes, and Sarah raised hers in return.
A silent toast to the work they had done, the family they had built, the love that had grown from patience and presence and negotiation. Oliver tugged on her hand. "Come on, there are people who want to meet you. I have been telling everyone about how you are the best negotiator in the world, and now they all want advice." "I am not the best negotiator in the world." "You are. You negotiated with me, and I am the hardest case ever." Sarah laughed. "You are not a case, Oliver. You are a person. And you were never hard. You were just hurting." "I am not hurting anymore. Well, sometimes I still am, but it is better now." That is all anyone can ask for. To feel a little better, a little safer, a little more understood. Is that what negotiation is really about? Making people feel better and safer? Sarah knelt down to Oliver's eye level. Yes, real negotiation is not about winning. It is about understanding what people need and finding a way for everyone to get something important. It is about respect and listening and being willing to change your mind when you learn new information. That is what you taught me, and that is what you taught your dad. And that is what we are going to teach other families, because everyone deserves to feel heard and understood and safe. Oliver hugged her suddenly, fiercely. "I am really glad you did not quit like the others. I am really glad I stayed." They rejoined the party, and Sarah found herself surrounded by people, asking questions, seeking advice, wanting to understand how she had achieved what seemed impossible. She answered honestly, emphasizing that there had been no magic, no secret technique, just patience and presence and the willingness to really listen. "That is what you taught me, and that is what you taught your dad. And that is what we are going to teach other families, because everyone deserves to feel heard and understood and safe." Oliver hugged her suddenly, fiercely. "I am really glad you did not quit like the others. I am really glad I stayed." They rejoined the party, and Sarah found herself surrounded by people, asking questions, seeking advice, wanting to understand how she had achieved what seemed impossible. She answered honestly, emphasizing that there had been no magic, no secret technique, just patience and presence and the willingness to really listen. "That is what you taught me, and that is what you taught your dad. And that is what we are going to teach other families, because everyone deserves to feel heard and understood and safe." Oliver hugged her suddenly, fiercely. "I am really glad you did not quit like the others. I am really glad I stayed." They rejoined the party, and Sarah found herself surrounded by people, asking questions, seeking advice, wanting to understand how she had achieved what seemed impossible. She answered honestly, emphasizing that there had been no magic, no secret technique, just patience and presence and the willingness to really listen. But the truth was, there had been something magical. Not in the methodology or the strategies, but in the alchemy of human connection. In what happens when people lower their defenses and meet each other with honesty and compassion. In the transformation that occurs when someone who feels unseen finally feels visible. As the sun set over Central Park and the party continued around them, Sarah stood on the balcony with Alexander and Oliver, watching the city light up. "This is nice," Oliver said contentedly. "All of us together. I wish Mom could see it. I think she would be proud of you," Alexander said, his arm around his son. "I know I am. You are? Every single day. You have grown into such an amazing person, Oliver. Kind and thoughtful and brave. You went through something terrible and you did not let it break you. That takes real courage." Oliver leaned into his father. "I had help. I had you. And I had Sarah. I do not think I could have done it alone." "None of us could have," Sarah said. "That is the point. We are not supposed to do hard things alone. We are supposed to help each other." They stood together as the last light faded from the sky and the city sparkled below them. Three people who had found their way to each other through grief and patience and the willingness to keep trying when it would have been easier to give up. Sarah thought about the broken family she had walked into 2 years ago. The scared child who had hidden behind defiance. The grieving father who had been drowning in helplessness. She thought about how far they had come, how much they had healed, how love had found a way through the cracks in their armor, and she knew that this was what she had been meant to do, not just for Oliver and Alexander, but for all the families they would help, all the children who needed someone to really see them, all the parents who needed someone to show them the way back to their kids. The challenge had been simple. If you can negotiate with my son, I will double your salary. But what she had negotiated was so much more valuable than money. She had negotiated peace from chaos, connection from isolation, healing from pain. She had negotiated a family back to wholeness, and in doing so, she had found her own place to belong, her own family, her own purpose. Oliver squeezed her hand. "You are thinking really hard. What are you thinking about?" Sarah smiled. "I am thinking about how lucky I am to be here with you both." "We are lucky too," Oliver said. "This is what negotiation is supposed to be, right? Everyone gets something they need." "Exactly right. Then we all negotiated really well, because I got you, and Dad got help, and you got us. Nobody lost anything. We all just won together." From the mouth of a 10-year-old came the truth that so many adults struggle to understand. Negotiation at its best was not about winners and losers. It was about finding a way for everyone to win, for everyone to be heard, for everyone to matter. Alexander met Sarah's eyes over Oliver's head, and in that look was gratitude and respect and partnership. They had done this together. They had built something beautiful from something broken. Inside, the party continued. But out on the balcony, the three of them stood in the gathering dark, a family forged not from blood, but from choice and work and love. A family that had negotiated their way through pain to joy, from isolation to connection, from brokenness to wholeness. And Sarah knew that whatever challenges came next, whatever negotiations awaited them, they would face them together. Not as employer and employee, not as adult and child, but as family. That was the real prize. Not the doubled salary, or the successful business, or the transformed reputation. The real prize was this moment, this connection, this profound sense of belonging. Oliver
yawned. "Can we stay out here a little longer? I am not ready to go in yet." "We can stay as long as you want," Alexander said. So they stayed, watching the city lights, breathing the cool evening air, holding on to each other and the peace they had fought so hard to create. And Sarah thought about the long, winding road that had brought her here. All the interviews and rejections, all the doubt and uncertainty, all the moments when she had almost given up. She was glad she had not given up. She was glad she had walked through that door 2 years ago. She was glad she had taken the challenge, had believed she could make a difference, had been willing to try when everyone else had failed. Because now, standing on this balcony with this man and this boy who had become her family, Sarah understood the truth that would guide all the work they would do together. Negotiation was not about power or control or winning. It was about understanding, about listening, about creating space for people to be themselves and still find common ground. It was about love, in the end, all of it. The patience and the presence and the willingness to keep showing up. It was all just different expressions of love. Oliver nestled between them, content and safe. The city sparkled below, infinite in its possibilities. And Sarah smiled, knowing that whatever came next, they would negotiate their way through it, together.